Welcome to Rich Tribe. Look, if you're a high schooler getting ready to jump into the workforce, or honestly anyone trying to make sense of the modern economy, you've probably heard the exact same financial advice on repeat, right? Just work hard, save your cash, and you'll be completely fine. But what if I told you the math of the system is actually rigged against people starting with less? Today, we're diving into this explainer to uncover the harsh truth about living paycheck to paycheck and how you can avoid the trap.
Hold up. Aren't financial struggles basically just the result of bad budgeting? Buying way too many expensive iced coffees and just making poor individual choices? Is living paycheck to paycheck actually a choice? Section 1. The poverty trap defined. Let's get right into it.
So, a poverty trap is basically a situation where individuals or even whole communities fall below the poverty line and literally cannot rise above it, no matter how hard they try. The absolutely crucial takeaway here is that hard work alone simply isn't always enough to escape, when the economic environment itself is actively pulling you back down. It's like trying to swim against a riptide. And this builds into a completely inescapable cycle. First, you've got poor work opportunities in areas that are either declining or overcrowded. Because those wages are so low, there's a total inability to pay for higher education, which essentially traps workers in those exact same low-paying jobs. At the same time, high expenses for basic, everyday needs hit hard. When your income is low and just staying alive is expensive, you're forced into continual debt. The loop closes and you're stuck.
Section 2. The real cost of poverty.
But wait, that doesn't make sense. If you have less money, don't you naturally spend less? Like, you just buy cheaper things, right?
That is the logical assumption, but the math actually proves the exact opposite. There's this brilliant concept by fantasy author Terry Pratchett called the Sam Vimes boots theory. Pratchett basically pointed out that a rich man can afford a solid $50 pair of boots that'll keep his feet dry for a whole decade, but a poor man, he can only afford $10 boots, and those wear out in a single season. So over 10 years, the poor man spends $100 constantly replacing cheap boots, and guess what? His feet are still wet. Having to buy low-quality goods because you don't have the upfront cash literally increases your long-term costs.
And we see this exact same thing with groceries. In lower-income neighborhoods, residents often don't have reliable transportation, so they're stuck shopping at tiny, local convenience stores. A regular box of Cheerios there might cost you $7.41, and bananas are $1.18 a pound. But drive out to a wealthier suburb with massive bulk stores, those exact same Cheerios are just $4.82, and bananas drop to 77 cents. If you are financially excluded from buying in bulk, you are paying massive markups for the exact same calories. It's wild.
Oh, and the penalty for financial exclusion gets so much worse. Because lower-income folks are often completely shut out of traditional banking and decent credit rates, they're forced to rely on short-term payday lenders when emergencies hit. Get this, borrowers in the U.S. spend $9 billion, yes, billion with a B, every single year just on payday loan fees. That is money just vanishing from their pockets, locking them even tighter into that debt cycle.
Section 3. Detroit and neighborhood decay. Let's look at a real-world example.
We can see exactly how fast a community collapses when the system breaks down by looking at Detroit's decline. Year 1, the major manufacturing jobs pack up and leave. Within 5 years, the local businesses that relied on those factory workers are forced to close, and public services get slashed because there's no tax revenue. By year 13, the number of high-poverty neighborhoods in Detroit had nearly tripled, exploding from 51 to a staggering 184. Once a neighborhood starts decaying like that, new systemic barriers pop up everywhere. Aging infrastructure leads to terrible sanitation, which causes illness, massive medical costs, and missed days at work. At the same time, all that economic desperation sparks high crime and violence. That destroys property and skyrockets insurance rates, forcing families even deeper into debt just to fix a broken window or protect their own homes.
Okay, I hear you. But if the neighborhood is really that bad and there are literally no jobs, why don't people just commute to wealthier areas? Like, can't you just drive to a better job?
It sounds super simple, right? But lacking affordable transportation physically blocks people from accessing those higher-paying regional jobs. If you live in a declining area, public transit is almost always the first thing on the chopping block, so you need a car. But having a low income means you get slammed with terrible, high-interest auto loans. On top of that, car insurance is significantly more expensive for low-income drivers. You literally cannot afford the ride to the better opportunity. It's a total catch-22.
Section 4. Lifestyle creep and debt. Because this isn't just a low-income problem. Wait, really? So if my goal is just to graduate, snag a high-paying six-figure job, I'm completely safe from this debt cycle, right?
You'd think so. But unfortunately, modern economics has a trap waiting for high earners too. Check this out. The median square footage of a new American home grew dramatically over the last few decades. We're talking jumping 50% larger, even while median wages stayed relatively flat. This is what we call lifestyle creep. High-income individuals frequently inflate their fixed costs. They buy massive houses, they lease luxury cars, mostly just to signal wealth to others. They take on heavy, recurring debt, which means they are still living paycheck to paycheck, just at a much higher dollar amount.
And generational data perfectly illustrates the macroeconomic pressures we all face. Whether you were born in 1950, 1970, or 1990, you faced wildly different economic realities regarding inflation and stock market growth during your 20s. The economic system and societal expectations force even higher earners to stretch their finances right to the breaking point. Honestly, a market crash or an unexpected layoff can completely wipe out a highly leveraged high earner overnight.
Section 5. Breaking the financial cycle. Let's talk solutions.
Man, this is honestly pretty bleak. How do we actually escape this trap? Like, what are the actual real-world solutions here?
Escaping the poverty trap usually requires a mix of external catalysts and big systemic changes. First, there's social mobilization. That's communities organizing together to advocate for resources and volunteer support. Second, especially in rural areas, agricultural development is huge. If we provide seeds, fertilizer, and technology, local farmers can actually become self-sufficient. And third, industry relocation, creating real incentives for businesses to move into impoverished areas to provide stable, high-paying jobs for the community.
Now, before we look at the ultimate personal tools you can use for escaping the trap, if you are finding this explainer helpful, make sure to subscribe to the Rich Tribe channel, like, comment, and share. We absolutely love empowering you with the knowledge to navigate the modern economy, so hit that subscribe button to keep learning with us.
Okay, finally, let's talk about human development and professional skills. Systemic change takes time, but personal finance skills, you can apply those today. And the absolute most powerful skill you can learn right now is zero-based budgeting. This means tracking every single dollar so your income minus your expenses equals exactly zero. By using a simple template to track fixed expenses like your rent versus variable expenses like your groceries, beginners can clearly see exactly where their money is going. A super common pitfall when you're just starting out is failing to prioritize real needs over recurring non-essential costs. You literally must track every dollar to avoid high-interest debt. This is how you build an emergency fund, which is basically your personal shield against the poverty trap and those predatory payday loans we talked about.
So, as you prepare to actually enter the workforce, I want to leave you with a final, provocative thought. Contrast your individual choices, like sticking to a zero-based budget, against the massive systemic barriers we just explored. Ask yourself, are you controlling your money, or is the systemic cycle controlling you? Thanks for joining me for this explainer today, and keep questioning the system.